You are doing 3 things every single day that are quietly accelerating dementia in your brain, not occasionally, every day. And the most confronting part, every single one of them feels completely harmless. One of them, you were actually told, was good for you. A Swedish research team tracked 20,000 women for 20 years. The women who spent the least time outdoors, the ones who stayed in the shade, avoided the sun, did everything their doctor told them, had the same risk of dying as women who smoked cigarettes. Not similar, the same. That finding is not from a fringe website. It was published in peer-reviewed research, and it points directly to something happening inside the brain of every person over 60 who lives the way most modern Australians live. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what those 3 habits are. I'm going to show you the mechanism, what is happening inside your neurons right now. And I'm going to give you a complete action plan you can start tomorrow morning that costs nothing, requires no equipment, and is backed by research from University College London, Harvard, and multiple randomized controlled trials. If you are over 60 and you spend most of your day indoors, this video was made for you. Before we go any further, quick question. How many hours do you spend outside on a typical day? Write me just the number in the comments. One word. I read every single one. I am Dr. Luca. I work in brain health and longevity, and over the years one question has defined my research. Why do some people reach 85 with a sharp, clear, fully functioning mind, while others begin losing theirs in their late 60s? The answers I have found are almost never what people expect. My patients over 60 are, for the most part, doing everything right. They take their supplements. They eat reasonably well. They go to their checkups. They have been very careful about sun exposure because they were told to be, and yet their memory is slipping. Their thinking is slower. Their energy is flat in ways that sleep does not fix. What the latest research now reveals is that the missing factor is not in a pill bottle, not in a diet plan, and not in a prescription. It is in something so fundamental that our ancestors never had to think about it, because it surrounded them every single day of their lives. Light and darkness, not as metaphors, as biological signals that directly control whether your brain cells live, thrive, and stay sharp, or quietly begin to fail. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how this works, why modern life has broken the system, and what 3 specific changes will restore it. Let us start with what is actually happening inside your brain right now. Picture your brain as a city, a vast humming city of 100 billion neurons, all firing signals, storing memories, running calculations, keeping you sharp, keeping you you. Every building in that city needs electricity to function. That electricity comes from tiny power generators inside each cell. Scientists call them mitochondria. Here is what most people over 60 are never told. As you age, those generators begin to fail. By the time you reach 70, the energy output of your mitochondria has dropped by up to 70% compared to when you were young. 70%. Imagine running your entire home, every light, every appliance, every heating system, on less than a third of the power you used to have. Things slow down, things flicker, and eventually things stop working altogether. That is not a metaphor for what happens in an aging brain. That is the literal biological process. When the mitochondria in your neurons cannot produce enough energy, those neurons cannot fire properly. They cannot form new memories with the same strength. They cannot clear out the toxic waste proteins, the amyloid plaques that accumulate between brain cells and are the hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. They cannot repair themselves overnight the way they are supposed to. The result, over years and decades, is cognitive decline, memory loss, dementia. And this process, mitochondrial energy failure, is at the root of nearly every brain disease that affects people over 60. Quick check, have you noticed any of these in the last year? Forgetting words mid-sentence, walking into a room and forgetting why. Names taking longer to come. Write yes, if any of those sound familiar. You are not alone, and more importantly, this is not inevitable. So the central question becomes, what does your mitochondria need to keep producing energy as you age? And what are you doing, or not doing, that is cutting off that supply? The answer to the first question is something that has been present for every single moment of human evolution, that our ancestors were immersed in for their entire waking lives, and that the average Australian over 60 now receives in dangerously small amounts. Sunlight, not for vitamin D. That is a conversation we will come back to, and what I am about to tell you will change how you think about vitamin D entirely. Sunlight is not one thing. It is a spectrum. On one end sits ultraviolet light, the short, high-energy wavelengths that cause sunburn and produce vitamin D in your skin. On the other end sits infrared light, long, deep-penetrating wavelengths that are invisible to your eye, but that you feel every time you step outside on a warm morning as heat on your skin. Infrared light penetrates the human body up to 8 centimeters deep, deep enough to reach your muscles, your blood vessels, your organs, and critically, deep enough to interact directly with the mitochondria inside your cells. When infrared light reaches your mitochondria, it triggers the production of a powerful antioxidant called melatonin, not the sleep hormone your brain makes at night, but a cellular melatonin produced inside each mitochondrion that neutralizes the oxidative stress destroying your cellular generators. Professor Glenn Jeffrey at University College London has run multiple randomized controlled trials on this mechanism. Using red and infrared light at 670 nanometers, his team demonstrated measurable improvements in mitochondrial efficiency, glucose metabolism, and, most relevant for brain health, visual processing in participants with early decline. The retina at the back of your eye contains the highest concentration of mitochondria of any tissue in the human body. When those mitochondria are well nourished by infrared light, the signal going to your brain is clearer. Your visual system stays sharper. Your cognitive processing is directly supported. And here is the research that stopped me in my tracks when I first read it. A study in Edinburgh mapped the relationship between sunlight exposure and mortality across England, controlling for temperature, socio-economic status, and exercise habits. Areas that received more sunlight had significantly lower death rates from cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, and neurological conditions, independently of every other variable they measured. Then they ran the same study in Italy, same finding. The researchers wrote that if the relationship was causal, it represented a significant public health intervention opportunity, and that the mechanism appeared to be entirely independent of vitamin D. Something beyond vitamin D, something in the light itself. I want to tell you about Margaret. She is 72, lives in a suburb of Melbourne, and came to see me 18 months ago with early cognitive decline flagged by her GP, sharp woman, reads voraciously, crossword every morning, walks 30 minutes each day on her treadmill. But she had not been outside before 10 in the morning in over a decade. Her mother had a melanoma removed in her late 60s, and Margaret had made a quiet decision. The Australian sun was the enemy, and she was going to win that fight. When I explained what infrared light was doing, or rather not doing, for her mitochondria, she sat with it for a long moment. Then she said, "So I have been protecting my skin and starving my brain at the same time." That is exactly it. That is habit 1. Now I need to address something that almost every patient raises at this point. "But Dr. Luca, I take vitamin D every day. Surely that covers it." During the COVID pandemic, a pattern emerged so consistently that it was impossible to ignore. Patients arriving at hospital with high vitamin D levels were surviving at dramatically higher rates. Patients with low vitamin D were dying far more often. The logical response from the medical community was immediate. Supplement vitamin D in patients. Get those levels up. It did not work. Multiple clinical trials showed that giving vitamin D supplements to sick patients had minimal impact on outcomes. The association was real. The supplementation did almost nothing. Here is what the research now suggests. Vitamin D levels in your blood are not the cause of better health outcomes. They are a marker, a signal of something else entirely. High vitamin D tells you that a person spends meaningful time outdoors in natural sunlight. The real benefit was never the vitamin D. It was the infrared radiation hitting the mitochondria. Think of it this way. Imagine you notice that people who carry umbrellas tend to get wet less often during storms. You conclude umbrellas cause dryness, so you hand out umbrellas to everyone during a drought. Nothing happens, because the umbrella was never causing the dryness. It was a marker of the behavior, going outside prepared, that led to the outcome. Vitamin D is the umbrella. Infrared light is the rain. This does not mean vitamin D supplements are useless. They have genuine, well-documented benefits for immune function, bone health, and autoimmune conditions. Research from the VITAL trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine showed daily supplementation reduced autoimmune disease risk meaningfully. Take your vitamin D. But if you believe the tablet is protecting your brain from dementia, the research suggests it is not. Not in the way that actually matters. Now we come to habit 2, and this one happens inside your home every single evening, without you thinking about it for a single moment. Here is a fact that almost nobody in the general population knows. For the first time in the entire history of the human species, roughly 300,000 years of Homo sapiens on this planet, people are being exposed to artificial light that contains almost no infrared component whatsoever. Every light source that has ever existed before the last 20 years, candles, kerosene lamps, open fires, incandescent bulbs, produced a broad spectrum of light, warm, full, rich in the long wavelengths, including infrared. Whenever our ancestors sat by firelight in the evening, their mitochondria were still receiving infrared signals. Then came the LED revolution. LED bulbs were designed for one purpose: maximum energy efficiency. Engineers stripped away everything the human eye cannot see, including all the infrared. What remained was a narrow band of light, heavily weighted toward the blue end of the spectrum, delivering illumination, while consuming the least possible electricity. It was a triumph of engineering. And it created something that had never existed in human history: artificial light with no infrared, paired with abundant blue light. Professor Glenn Jeffrey, the same UCL researcher we discussed earlier, conducted a study where he switched participants from standard LED office lighting to incandescent bulbs. The result? A 25% improvement in color differentiation, a direct measure of retinal mitochondrial function. 25% improvement, just from changing the bulbs. Now here is where it compounds into something genuinely alarming for people over 60. Your mitochondria are already producing significantly less energy than they did at 40. The infrared stimulus from sunlight that would naturally top up that energy production. You are getting less of it because you spend most of your day indoors. And in the evenings, instead of winding down with warm firelight that still contains some infrared, you are sitting under LED lights that contain none, while simultaneously flooding your retina with blue light. Your brain cells are running on depleted generators, and the recharging mechanism is being systematically removed. If this is landing for you, if this explains something you have noticed in your own thinking or energy, write brain light in the comments right now. I read everyone, always. The evidence that light drives brain health at a population level is not subtle. Researchers mapped deaths across Australia by calendar month: cardiac deaths, dementia complications, kidney failure, respiratory disease, all causes. The pattern held across every single category. Deaths peak in June and July. Every year, without exception, Australia's winter, the months with the shortest days. Now flip the globe. In the United Kingdom, deaths peak in January and February, their winter. In Finland, December. In Greece, the last country south on the European continent, deaths peak in January, long after the darkness has already swept down from the Nordic countries through Europe. The shadow of winter follows the sun as it retreats toward the southern hemisphere. And wherever winter goes, death follows. Researchers who documented this stated clearly, the length of the day is the predictive variable. Not temperature, not social gatherings spreading illness, the availability of sunlight. Now, for those of you watching from Australia, I want to address a specific and very real tension. You live in one of the sunniest countries on Earth. You have access to natural infrared light that people in Scotland or Finland would consider a luxury for months of the year. And yet, because of decades of public health messaging about skin cancer and UV radiation, many Australians over 60 avoid the sun almost entirely. The concern about UV radiation is not wrong. Ultraviolet B, the high-energy short wavelength that causes sunburn and skin damage, does carry genuine cancer risk with prolonged, unprotected exposure. But UV light and infrared light behave completely differently. UV light cannot penetrate clothing. Infrared light passes straight through fabric. UV radiation is strongest between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. In the early morning, the sun sits lower in the sky, and its light travels obliquely through more atmosphere, dramatically reducing the UV component while the infrared remains available. The UK Biobank study, over 300,000 participants, found that greater sun exposure was associated with lower mortality from non-skin cancers, and critically, no statistically significant increase in melanoma incidence. You are not being asked to sunbake. You are being asked to go outside, a broad-brimmed hat, a long-sleeve shirt if you prefer. Early morning, before 9. Your skin is largely covered. Your UV exposure is minimal, but infrared light is moving through your clothing, through your skin, 8 centimeters deep, and your mitochondria are receiving exactly what they need. Tell me this. Do you currently go outside before 9 in the morning? Just write yes or no in the comments. Genuinely curious about what our community is working with. I want to share one piece of research that when I first read it, genuinely changed how I think about all of this. Researchers in Brazil took hospitalized patients, sick enough to be admitted, not yet sick enough to be on life support, and dressed them in a specially designed jacket lined with LED bulbs emitting infrared light at 940 nanometers. The same wavelength present in natural sunlight. Each patient wore the jacket for 15 minutes, once a day, for 7 days. Half the jackets were active, half were switched off. Patients could not tell the difference. The light was invisible and produced no detectable heat. Every single measurable endpoint favored the infrared group. Oxygen levels improved, breathing strength improved, blood markers improved, heart rate improved. All statistically significant, meaning the differences could not be attributed to chance. But the result that matters most: average hospital stay in the control group, 12 days. Average stay in the infrared group, 8 days. 4 fewer days in hospital, from 15 minutes of light per day. Professor Jeffrey's research adds a precise and important detail. The mitochondrial activation triggered by infrared light reaches its maximum effect at around 15 minutes. After that threshold, a biological switch activates and further exposure produces no additional benefit. Not 1 hour, not 30 minutes. 15 minutes is the threshold. This is the number I want you to carry with you from this video. Not a difficult target, not an inconvenient schedule change. 15 minutes outside each morning is the evidence-based dose. That is habit 1, corrected. Now let us complete the picture with habit 3, because without it, everything we have discussed about daytime light is only half the solution. There was a study whose title alone stopped me when I first came across it: Dark Days and Bright Nights. That is what the researchers called the pattern they were studying, and they found it was associated with increased mortality. Dark days and bright nights. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because it is an almost perfect description of how most people over 60 in Australia actually live. You spend most of your daylight hours indoors, under LED lights that contain no infrared, separated from the biological benefits of natural sunlight by glass and walls and routine. That is the dark day. Then in the evening, you sit under bright artificial lighting, watching television, scrolling a phone or tablet, a screen glowing directly into your eyes until minutes before you try to sleep. That is the bright night. Your brain has a master clock, the circadian rhythm, that governs when every biological repair process in your body runs. It governs when growth hormone is released, when neural waste is cleared from the brain, when memories from the day are consolidated into long-term storage, when mitochondria repair themselves. That clock is set by one signal above all others: light entering your eyes. Light means day. Your brain is awake, alert, metabolically active. Darkness means night. Your brain begins its recovery and repair cycle. When you sit under bright screens at 10 o'clock in the evening, your brain receives one unambiguous signal: it is still day. The repair cycle does not begin. The mitochondrial recovery does not happen. The amyloid waste that accumulated in your brain during the day is not cleared on schedule. And there is a second mechanism at work. Your pineal gland, a tiny structure in the center of your brain, produces melatonin in response to darkness. This is different from the cellular melatonin we discussed earlier. This is a system-wide signal that coordinates the entire body shift into repair mode. Artificial light at night suppresses that melatonin production. Even low levels of light can do it. Even the LED display on a clock radio on your bedside table contributes to light pollution in your sleeping environment. A study comparing reading before sleep on a tablet device versus reading a physical book under a lamp found that the tablet produced enough blue-weighted light to measurably delay the onset of sleep and suppress melatonin production, even at what seemed like a comfortable, low brightness level. Your eyelids are not thick enough to block all light, which means a room that seems dark with your eyes closed may still be producing enough light to interfere with your brain's repair signal. Robert is 68, retired engineer from Brisbane. Came to me because his wife had noticed he was repeating himself in conversations, asking questions he had asked an hour earlier, forgetting names of people he had known for years. When we went through his daily routine, his daytime was almost entirely indoors, but the thing that immediately stood out was his evenings. Television from 6 until 11. Phone in hand throughout. Bedroom with no blackout curtains, a streetlight visible through the window, and a bright green clock radio on the bedside table that he had owned for 20 years. Robert was not sleeping badly by his own assessment. He was in bed for 8 hours. But his brain was spending those 8 hours in a room that was never truly dark, receiving constant low-level light signals that told his circadian clock it was never quite night. The repair cycle was perpetually delayed, and the accumulated deficit over months and years was showing up in his conversation. Here is the complete action plan. 3 habits to correct. Specific, practical, free. Habit 1 corrected. Go outside within 90 minutes of waking. The target is 15 minutes of genuine outdoor exposure before 9 in the morning, not standing at the letterbox for 30 seconds. 15 minutes outside, moving if you can manage it. Morning light contains proportionally more infrared and significantly less UV radiation than midday sun. The UV index across most of Australia before 9 is low enough that brief skin exposure carries minimal risk, but wear your hat if you prefer. Cover your arms. The infrared moves straight through fabric. Your mitochondria receive it regardless. Do not do this behind glass. Modern windows are engineered to block infrared to reduce indoor heat. Sitting by a sunny window gives you the appearance of sunlight, with almost none of the mitochondrial benefit. Walk to the end of your street and back. Sit in your garden with your morning cup of tea. Stand on your veranda facing east. The activity matters less than the outdoor exposure. On cloudy days, still go outside. Clouds absorb some infrared, but you will receive more outside on an overcast morning than inside by any window. Habit 2 corrected. Reduce LED blue light exposure in the evenings. This does not require rewiring your home. It requires small, deliberate changes. After 7 in the evening, lower the brightness of any screens you are using. Many devices have a night mode or warm color setting that reduces the blue component. Activate it and leave it on permanently. If your television has a warm color temperature setting, use it. The difference in picture quality is minimal. The difference in the signal reaching your brain is significant. Where possible, switch bedside and lounge room lamps to warm spectrum globes, the ones labelled 2700K or lower. These produce less blue light and a warmer, more infrared-rich output than standard cool white LEDs. If you do use a red light therapy device, the kind specifically designed to emit 670 nanometer infrared and red light, the research supports 15 minutes in the morning as the evidence-based protocol, not at night, where the light component may interfere with your circadian signal. Habit 3 corrected. Make your bedroom genuinely dark. This is the simplest change and often produces the most noticeable effect within the first week. Remove or cover any LED displays in your bedroom. Clock radios, air conditioning units, charging cables, all of them. They produce less light than a candle, but in a dark room they are enough to register on the circadian system. Install blackout curtains or a lined blind if street light enters your room. If that is not practical in the short term, a sleep mask is a well-supported alternative. And one with a contoured inner surface that does not press directly on the eyelids is preferable, since eyelid pressure can interfere with REM sleep. Stop using screens, phone, tablet, television, at least 30 minutes before you intend to sleep. 60 minutes is better. This single change, according to the circadian research, can advance your natural sleep onset by up to 45 minutes and meaningfully increase the depth of slow-wave sleep, the stage during which the brain clears amyloid waste. The goal expressed in one sentence: bright days and dark nights. That is the biological environment your brain evolved in. That is what it is trying to return to every 24 hours. Your job is to stop working against it. Let me bring all 3 together. Your brain cells run on mitochondria. As you age, those generators lose up to 70% of their output, and that energy loss drives dementia, memory loss, and cognitive decline. Infrared light from natural sunlight is the single most powerful natural stimulus for mitochondrial function we know of. 15 minutes outside each morning is the evidence-based dose. That is habit 1 corrected. LED lights in your home have stripped away the infrared component from your evening environment for the first time in human history. Reducing blue light exposure after 7 p.m. begins to restore the natural recovery signal. That is habit 2 corrected. Artificial light at night suppresses melatonin, delays your circadian repair cycle, and prevents the nightly clearing of brain waste that protects against dementia. A genuinely dark bedroom is not a comfort preference. It is a brain health intervention. That is habit 3 corrected. Bright days, dark nights, 15 minutes outside every morning. If this video shifted something for you today, if it named something you have been noticing but could not explain, please share it with someone you care about, a parent, a sibling, a friend who spends their days inside. The people who need this most will never search for it on their own. And drop a comment below. Which of the 3 habits do you think is your biggest gap right now? Not enough morning sun, too much evening screen light, or a bedroom that is never truly dark? Write the number 1, 2, or 3. I read every comment, every single one. If you want to keep building a sharper brain as you age, subscribe and join a community of Australians who are taking this seriously. New video every single day. Take care of your brain. It is the only one you have got.